Hey, Faith family. So I don't know if you've heard of the Alpha course. So I just want to quickly talk about that. So I'm just going to read this from Wikipedia because they describe it better than I can. So the Alpha course is an evangelical course which seeks to introduce the basics of Christian faith through a series of talks and discussions. The Alpha courses are being run in churches, homes, workplaces, prisons, universities, and a wide variety of other locations. So I took the Alpha program with my husband probably a year ago, let's say. Although I've been a Christian for a long time, I just wanted to know what the hype was all about. Like I saw like billboards and stuff like that, and our church was always talking about it, and I just thought, okay, let's just see what it's about. And if anything, I'll be able to gain just maybe a greater knowledge for just, I guess, even like defending my faith is kind of what my idea was going into it. I was like, people are going to ask these questions. And so there's lots of, I don't have like the book physically with me right now, but I do have it upstairs. But there's different series like, the first one's like, like I think it's like, what is Christianity? Who is Jesus? Why did Jesus die? Is another one. And how can I have faith? So it goes on, right? I believe there's 7 or 8 or something like that. And so when I did this series, like I said, my intention was that. Something I didn't kind of care for was like, I just felt like they've pushed Alpha too much. I was just like, yeah, like Alpha's so great. And like every time there'd be like videos on like how great Alpha was. It's like, okay, I'm already here. Like, you don't have to convince me that Alpha's great. Like, I'm here. But like, God is great is what I wish they would have reiterated more, that it's not so much that Alpha's doing all these things. It's like, God, who is the Alpha and the Omega, right? So that was just one thing that I didn't care for. And I was like, I should write to them, but I like never did. Anyways, but the one that I love the most is the second episode. I'm going to link that below. It's called Who is Jesus? So like, I kind of thought I knew who Jesus was, right? And my husband would joke around like, who's this Jesus guy? Or like, that we're going to find out about him, right? But I honestly, like I walked in hoping that I would be able to defend my faith, but I walked out of Alpha just more in love with God. Like honestly, it was like something changed inside me, although I like knew Jesus and I like knew of him and things like that, but just to kind of hear the evidence that they have in there, just for like, so it's not just who is Jesus, they're talking about like the actual evidence of how they can prove that Jesus is real. Like there's actual like, documentations and, the scriptures and just like how they've preserved these different archaeological things, the letters and those type of things. So it was really a lot more in depth than I thought it would be, as particularly that session. And like I said, I walked out of there more convinced myself, even though I wasn't there to convince myself. Like I was fully like, I'm been fully convinced for a while. But somehow that evidence just made me so like nowadays honestly I'm one of these YouTubers that when people are like, God's not real, like Jesus isn't real, like it's just a bunch of propaganda, I'm like, actually no. So I'll go and take this like little, I'll insert this little thing like to a link to this thing, and I'm like, here's the evidence. Like they're like, there's no proof, there's no evidence. Like I've done this like a number of times, and I've just now copied and pasted it onto my phone just so I don't have to like go search for it all the time. I'm like, this needs to just be on my phone already. And it's not because like I think I'm better than people, or I think I want everyone to like follow what I follow, but it's like I didn't know that there was evidence for me. I didn't know that there was evidence for me. I was like, it's my faith, like I believe it. It's like, faith like without seeing, basically like childlike faith is what I kind of had. But then just to kind of see the evidence that they had, and also just even looking at myself, like actually I have tons of evidence in my own self, in my own walk of like how I know God is real, right? And so some people haven't had those encounters, right? And I'm not trying to like shove it down their throat, but it's like, if you're gonna say, oh, there's no evidence, but maybe you've just never sought any evidence, right? And there's a whole movie, like the case for Christ, I believe it's called, and that's basically what he's doing in there, right? He's like trying to prove to his wife, who becomes a believer, like way into their marriage, that Jesus isn't real, and he does all this research and does all this digging and evidence and everything. That the last line basically that kind of breaks him is like he goes to like a pastor or something like that, and he's like, oh, you know, this is what they're saying, like this is all the, no, I think it's a friend of his who's an atheist or a pastor, I can't remember, honestly. Those are two totally different things, I can't remember. But he, you know, the guy that he's talking to, he's like how much evidence would be enough? Because at this point I think like you've already made up your mind and there's not going to be enough evidence to prove it to you. And then he just kind of like breaks down and he's like, God, like, you know, if you're real, like that's crazy, like I surrender to you, kind of thing. And then he, you know, goes on to become a pastor, and it's like a real life story, right, of his journey. Just I think he was a journalist, and so trying to prove that he's not real, and then coming to the conclusion that, you know, he had already made up his mind, so no matter how much evidence there was, he wasn't going to be convinced of it. So I think some people are like that out there, and it's not my case to go out there, but like when I come upon those, like I'm like, here's something for you. You can look at it, you can not, you can call me crazy, you can do whatever, right? But I just want you to have it in case, you know, it speaks to somebody. So like it did to me. So anyways, I'll link those down below. And if you haven't done the Alpha program, like I'm not plugging them or anything like that. Like it doesn't matter to me whether you take it or not. It doesn't affect me in any way, but I know just how enriching it was for me. So yeah, if you hear about it or whatever, and if you're kind of have been curious about it, maybe check it out, see what it's all about. Actually, now that I think about it, I actually did it once before, but I didn't finish it. I was like week 2 and I was like, this is boring. So that's where I was at the time. I just wasn't ready for it, right? And that's how our spiritual walk goes. And God is patient with us, right? He's not like, you know, banging out of the door of our heart, like, let me in now. Like, he's a gentleman, right? He wants us to invite him in and stuff. So yeah, I welcome you to go look at that link and just check it out if you have, you know, some time. And I hope that you have an awesome, wonderful, blessed day. And don't forget that God loves you. Bye.